This episode is brought to you by Divvy from Bill. If you're growing a business, you need Divvy. It's the free spend and expense software powered by the Divvy Visa Business Card. With credit lines from $50K to $5 million, Divvy is here to help you thrive. For a limited time, get $500 when you get started with Divvy. Request a demo at getdivvy.com/500. Terms and conditions apply. See offer page for details. Advertised credit lines are not guaranteed and are determined upon application approval. Card issued by Cross River Bank, member FDIC.
Today on CityCast Philly, it's our spring fling week. We're talking all things spring. To kick things off, let's start with some spring cleaning. But before you throw out your old junk and take it to the curb, our guest today says his organization is building systems, advocating for policy changes, and supporting businesses to recycle and repurpose used goods in a more meaningful and sustainable way. It's Monday, March 20th. I'm Trenae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Nick Esposito, you're a director of policy and engagement at Circular Philadelphia. So your nonprofit is working to create policies that allow people to repurpose materials instead of throwing them away or leaving them on the streets. You're building something called a circular economy. First, Nick, what's a circular economy? What does that even mean?
Thanks for asking, Trenae, and thanks for having me.
Sure.
So a circular economy kind of reimagines the way that we did basically our industrial economy of the 20th century. And that economy was based on what we call the take, make, and trash model. So we take things out of the ground, we make them with those natural resources, and then crazily enough, we just throw them away. We can't sustain doing that into the future. So what Circular Philadelphia and the circular economy is advocating for is we've taken enough out of the ground right now. How do we keep all of those resources that are above ground in production for as long as possible, whether they're raw materials like metals or plastics even, or fully formed products like the toys that we give our kids, the desk that I have in my office right now, the chair I'm sitting on, the computer that I'm using. How do we keep them in circulation as long as possible and basically just be more mindful about designing waste out, but also just reducing the resources that we're using?
Right. Now, does Philly have good systems set in place already where we're actually doing some of this? We're recycling and donating or repurposing items?
Well, Trenae, I was thinking about this. And I've got good news and bad news for you. The bad news is you always got to put the bad news first.
Right.
So the bad news is that our city systems are in a challenging time right now. I mean, coming out of the pandemic, also recycling markets are already in bad shape before the pandemic and are in worse shape now, although they are starting to improve. We have some challenges. Also, Circular Philadelphia has not been shy to say that there's definitely some mismanagement that's been happening on the city level about how we're handling our trash and our recycling. So we do have curbside trash. We have curbside recycling with your blue bin, which goes in there. Mm-hmm. And we have these sanitation centers around the city where they actually will take trash, that single stream recycling. And then they also will take things like electronics. But other items like, big bulky items like furniture that goes out the curb.
What about tires?
Tires,
we see them around, yeah.
They'll take a few tires at the sanitation centers. They take 2 at a time, which is a little frustrating.
Okay.
But, I guess they can't be overrun with tires. But with like those bulky materials, they used to have bulk pickups. Other cities have bulk pickups. We don't have that anymore. And like, I always say, God bless the sanitation workers. They will throw a, couch that's out in the curbside into the back of a trash compactor. But the good news is that even with all those challenges, there are so many amazing businesses here in the city of Philadelphia that are providing all of these options for how to keep those materials out of the landfills, out of incinerators, either through recycling or even reuse. And that's what Circular Philadelphia represents. And, our hope is that one day, especially with this new mayoral administration coming in, the public and the private will converge again and it'll all be fully supported. But right now, at least, like I said, the good news is we have a lot of options for all those unwanted goods that you need to get out of your house.
So, Nick, many of us will be doing some spring cleaning around the house in the coming weeks. And then I love to hear where we can actually donate or recycle those used items. So let's start with furniture. Where can we go if we have that old couch, those old end tables that we don't want anymore?
For sure. So we actually have a thing called the circular scavenger hunt right now, where we're asking people to go out and, fill out this form that says, where do you see this in your neighborhood already? What's the business that's the repair shop or the thrift store that can take that end table and that couch, because that's part of the circular economy. So we want to engage those people and bring them into our movement to, fully form it. So to that question, there are plenty of thrift stores that will take furniture. I know there's one right down the street from my house, Circle Thrift. I take furniture down there all the time. Now, sometimes there's challenges to it, right? One is you just can't show up with a couch and say, take this couch, because your couch might have a lot of problems with it. It might have stains, and they might say, we can't sell that. So
Right.
in this conversation, I want to be very thoughtful for people to think about as they're donating, especially to thrift stores. Thrift stores are not landfills. Don't just take all of your junk down there. And it's like, it's got a big stain. There's a spring coming through. The couch is a little wonky.
Yeah,
I'll just give it to the thrift store.
That.
Not cool.
Right.
Don't do that, right? So there's other organizations that will come in, and then there's also the travel, right? Sometimes people don't have a truck to take a couch down. Luckily, it's 3 blocks from my house. I've actually walked things down before. I put a chair on a skateboard one time and moved it down.
Okay, smart.
you got to be resourceful, right? But there are, different agencies and donation companies that will come and take your material. And then I want to give a plug for one of our Circular Philadelphia members. They're called Rego. They are a furniture kind of moving, reuse and recycling startup here in the city of Philadelphia. They're growing like crazy right now. I also want to give a shout out to the Habitat for Humanity stores. There's one on Washington Avenue. There's one in Cherry Hill.
They've got great furniture. Yeah.
Exactly. You might have been there before. They have great stuff there. And also you can donate to them.
Let's talk about electronics. Any businesses in the city that will take some of our old laptops, televisions, even radios?
So you can drop them, as I said, those sanitation centers throughout the city. There's 6 of them, and they are strategically located. Again, as I was saying, we want to engage them more. We think they could be utilized even more to be part of the solution. But they do offer to take electronics, and they do use a company. I'm not sure who the contract is with now, but whomever it is, they are certified. And it's really important to make sure whomever you're dropping off your electronics with, that they have there's 2 different organizations that certify that they're doing the right thing with those materials. Sadly enough, some unscrupulous businesses that aren't certified will just be dumping these things. So you want to make sure that you pick the right place. I also want to give a shout out to a Circular Philadelphia member, Retriever. They take clothes, which we'll talk about in a second, but they also take electronics as well. But like I said, for free, you can take electronics as long as it has a cord and it's not something like a refrigerator that has refrigerant coolant in it or things like that.
Okay.
Like a radio, a small TV, things like that. You can take it to the sanitation centers.
Okay, so tell us about where we could recycle our clothes.
Yeah. So again, Retriever is a great option for that. You can use text message to schedule a pickup at your door. They'll come. They do charge a fee to pick up those clothes, but they'll pick them up and then take them. And again, that's a whole other world of where that stuff goes. Again, those stained shirts that should probably be rags. Nobody wants your old,
Right.
t-shirt,
Right.
your undershirt. Definitely nobody wants your used underwear. All right. People
That's a no-no.
That's a big no-no.
Yeah.
So they actually take it and then recycle it into fabric that they can use to make new underwear, or they could use it and downcycle it.
Oh, interesting. Nick, thanks for those recommendations. Where can people learn or begin the process of composting?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a few options that we have in the city. So one is if you have a backyard, you live in the Northwest or the Northeast, even in some parts of the city where you just have some space. There are lots of resources online. There's a master composter course, just like the master gardeners that people might know. I know Penn State Extension offers a lot of resources. The Pennsylvania Horticultural Society as well, on best practices on how to set a bin up and how to keep it so you don't have rats running around or really smelly stuff that your neighbors are, not happy about.
Yeah.
The city also launched, while I was still there, and it's continuing through the Farm Philly program, community composting sites. I actually run one at my wife and I in our community manage a community farm called Emerald Street Community Farm, right next to our house, actually, that has a community compost bin. So community members who are members of the farm can come and drop off compost. And there are, I think, maybe 12 sites around the city currently doing that at different gardens and farms. And then finally, you have services like Bennett Compost, Circle Compost. They're paid services, albeit, I would say for, some people, very affordable. Obviously, other people with, challenging economic situations, not. But they will do pick up at your door of your compost bucket that they give you, which is great. And, our hope is that becomes a more publicly supported thing. And there's actually a local company that is part of the public system for just citywide compost collection that cities do provide.
I live in an apartment. And so how can I, maybe implement these programs or changes for my neighbors?
So a lot of the services I talked about, it's great to go to an apartment complex because it's like a one-stop shop. You go there and you can get all the bins, you can get everything you need. So definitely tell your neighbors about this, right? If you really like one of the services, take a flyer and put it in the, common area. And then also, I think, landlords need to be held more accountable. We hear this a lot, that landlords are not offering recycling as much anymore. They don't want to have two dumpsters. It's where do I put my trash? Where's my trash can? Landlords are responsible for providing those at least basic city service materials. So really kind of advocate towards your the people who are managing your property.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. That's the sound of another sale on Shopify. The moment a business dream becomes reality. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. They simplify selling online and in person and provide 24/7 support so you can focus on successfully growing your business. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/offer22, all lowercase.
Okay, Nick, let's move outside and talk about how we can clean up and beautify our homes and our blocks. I love that you have a community garden that you manage right next door. That's so dope. But Nick, many people, including the city, are participating in a lot of spring cleanups. What are some of the cleanup do's and don'ts we should be aware of?
Yeah, so I would say with a cleanup, do's and don'ts. The most frustrating thing, again, I would hear this all the time when I was Zero Waste and Litter Director. It is so supremely frustrating to clean up, come back a week or two later, whether it's a vacant lot or it's just your street, and it just looks the same. Like that is so demoralizing and disheartening. So one is, we need better city policies, and the city needs to work better to stop those larger issues. But one thing that residents could do is really trying to kind of design out those issues, right? So there is tons of behavioral science around if a clean, kind of well-maintained looking block exists, it will stay clean. If a block is dirty, people tend to litter there. There's this mental thing that people do. If they see, and again, there's many ways that people litter. It's not always this blatant, I'm throwing this on the ground because I'm a jerk. It's I tried to throw it in the trash can, but it was overflowing and I think it made it in. I don't know. I'm leaving.
Or there may not be trash cans on the block.
There may not be a trash can. Exactly. So how do you make the conditions right that people will keep things clean? So, if you already cleaned up an area, maybe it's a little bit of a vacant lot, or it's a piece of scrubby land, maybe plant some flowers there, try to put something in its place that is going to be something nicer that, people aren't going to litter. Trash cans is one. We, when I was Zero Waste and Litter Director, we created a program called Community Cans. It engages community members to actually put trash cans out that they can manage and put their stuff out curbside. So there is a benefit. Although people are listening to this, I will put the plug. The city needs to have more and better managed and a better system for trash cans throughout the city. We have a very walkable city, lots of commerce all over the place. We need more trash cans, but that is one option for community members.
Let's say I got a few of my neighbors together. We want to organize a street cleanup. How can we make this happen?
Yeah. So if you are a block captain, there's a block captain program that's been around. I'm a block captain. It's been around since the 50s of neighbors kind of doing a lot of things on their block, organizing block parties, being kind of the eyes and ears on the streets for public safety, and then also doing cleaning. So they call it the Philadelphia More Beautiful Committee will come and provide brooms. They'll provide bags and the trash pickup, which is super important. Once you've collected all this trash, you got to think that's a do and don't collect a bunch of trash and then be like, now what do we do with it? Oh no, right. Call the city.
Right.
Plan that before you start cleaning. Mm-hmm. Another group, unless you're not a block captain, that's great to work with is the Community Life Improvement Program, or CLIP. You might see them around painting over graffiti, cleaning up vacant lots. You can organize, you can call them ahead of time, tell them that you're going to do that. They'll deliver supplies, and then they'll also come and collect the trash at the end of the day. And one other thing, again, we represent businesses, so there are some paid services. I'm going to give a shout out to my friends over at Glitter, the Get Litter app. They are a organization that basically creates opportunities for people to clean up blocks, and neighbors pay into it.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, Nick, what if there is a vacant lot on my block? Is there any opportunity for my neighbors and I to repurpose it? Or how should we go about doing that? I know that's that's pretty heavy too.
It is very complicated. Now, that's something that we are advocating for in Circular Philadelphia. So the first thing, I got to give this, disclaimer shout out to the people doing the long-term stuff, like the garden. Nobody plants a garden for a season, right? You do this because you want it to exist, and we need more gardens and we need more green space in the city of Philadelphia. So Emerald Community Farm, we work through the Neighborhood Gardens Trust to get that preserved as a garden. They have 50 gardens throughout the city. There are many gardens that are under threat through development. So that's a big piece of advocacy that's happening right now through the Land Bank, Neighborhood Gardens Trust, Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, Philadelphia Food Policy Advisory Council to protect those long-term uses.
Okay. But what if I don't want to make it a garden?
There you go. So what if you don't want the long-term use? What if I just want something short-term that it stops this illegal dumping. I don't want to, take it. That's what Circular Philadelphia is advocating for. And you can do short-term activations. And we're trying to make it easier from the city's standpoint. But right now, for lack of, good policies in place, it's always the old, ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And, I'm fine to go out and tell people if, you want to get on a vacant lot and start, like we said, you wood chip it down, throw some wood chips down and, maybe have like a community flea market once a month or something like that. Or, put some cool art in there. But again, this isn't legal advice. I'm not giving you that. I don't want to be held liable if something happens on the lot. But I will say that's how a lot of really cool projects have started. People just went out and did it.
So what needs to change from a policy standpoint?
Yeah. So, from just the litter and the illegal dumping standpoint, a lot of these situations are caused by systems, right? We don't, a lot of people that are collecting construction debris or clean outs, if someone goes and cleans out an apartment at like a university campus or wherever, there sometimes aren't great options for where they can actually take those materials. Now, we have a lot of recyclers here in the city, and more than most cities. But even with that, sometimes they're not as close to where, I've talked to small haulers who are like, if I'm doing a job in Southwest Philly, I don't want to drive all the way to the Northeast where some of those plants are. We're advocating for things like, what if there was a transfer station at one of the sanitation centers that's already in the Southwest where you could take that material? Also, the city just working in partnership with, a lot of these businesses. We say right now, we're, spending $45 million giving one major company, I'm not going to name, all of our recycling and trash business. Well, what if we split that money up amongst all the small businesses here in the city and they're actually publicly supported? So people had a public outlet to get rid of their recycling or their materials, but it's being supported by the government as well. And also, the third rail is composting. Hopefully there's many composting companies in the city and hopefully that's going to be engaged as well.
Nick, why haven't these changes why haven't they happened already?
It's hard, it's hard and it takes a lot of, before I was with Circular Philadelphia, I was the city zero waste and litter director, and we were making strides because this was a very focused kind of goal. It was bringing together all these different departments, and we were being innovative to make change and solve some of these municipal problems. And that is not currently a priority for this administration, as we've advocated with. So I want to drop and plug the Waste Free Philly Coalition. It's a coalition of anti-litter, reducing waste organizations throughout the city. They came together and made an agenda for the next mayor. And we say this has to be a priority. We still believe that's a systems issue. And if you change the systems, you can change the landscape of the city, which, take a walk outside of your house right now in Philly, it needs to change.
That's Nick Esposito, Director of Policy and Engagement at Circular Philadelphia. Nick, thank you so much for all these tips and for joining me on CityCast Philly.
Thank you, Trinae. This is a great show, so thank you so much for doing it.
To see the list of businesses Nick mentioned in this episode, check out the link in our show notes. And here's what else Philly's talking about. Businesses in our area can now enroll in SEPTA's Key Advantage program. According to the transit agency, businesses can offer employees this commuter incentive to take SEPTA at no cost to workers. Businesses of all sizes can take advantage. Apply by going to johntpass.com/keyadvantage. And Philly's Elixir coffee shops are serving something really cool. Order a hot drink and you'll get a poem wrapped around the cup sleeve. WHYY reports that the poetry is part of a 6-month-long public art initiative, and the poems are written by local poets. It's time for the tip of the day, where we share a life hack for living in Philly. If you're looking for a place you can take construction debris, used motor oil, and even hazardous waste, the city has sanitation convenience centers around the city. Check them out at phila.gov/recycling. Also, mark your calendars. The Streets Department's annual Philly Spring Cleanup will take place on Saturday, April 1st from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you have a tip of the day, we'd love to hear from you too. Call or text us at 215-259-8170. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter too. It's called Hey Philly. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city and a story about a local birding group. You don't want to miss it. Bye.
Good news, some good options that you can use to get rid of the materials that you have in your house.
Do you have a cat?
I do. I'm sorry. He was
I
so
heard them
quiet.
They want to be on the podcast.